Maybe I'll do that. Joe continued down the hill toward his car parked on the gravel road below. Another blank. It had been a long shot anyway, but he had to check it out. He had to check them all out. Bosworth stared after Quinn as he walked down the hill. The man was a legend. He'd once been an FBI agent, but had quit the bureau after Frazier was executed. He was now a detective with the Atlanta PD, tough as nails and squeaky clean. These days it was hard for city cops not to give in to temptation. That was one of the reasons Bosworth stayed in Rabun County. He never wanted to experience the cynicism and disillusionment he'd seen in Quinn's face. He couldn't be 40 yet, but he looked as if he'd gone to hell and back. His walkie-talkie buzzed, and he pressed the button. Bosworth. Quinn! Joe looked over his shoulder at Bosworth at the top of the cliff. My deputy just radioed me that my men on the far ridge have found more bodies. He paused. Well, skeletons. How many? Bosworth's plump face had paled in the early morning light, and he looked dazed. 8 so far. He thinks one of them is a little kid. They had found the Talladega bodies. Dom turned off the television set and considered the ramifications. As far as he knew, this was the first time any of his kills had been discovered. He had always been very careful and methodical, always going the extra mile. In this case, many extra miles. Those had been Atlanta kills, and he had transported the bodies to what had been his favorite graveyard then. But the Talladega skeletons were of little threat. By the time of those murders, he had learned enough not to leave a hint of evidence. Who had been the kills at Talladega? He vaguely remembered a blonde prostitute, a homeless black man, a teenager selling his body on the streets, and the little girl. Funny, but until that moment, he'd completely forgotten about the little girl. Pathology Department, Atlanta, 5 days later. The child was 7 or 8, female, and probably Caucasian. Ned Basil, the medical examiner, read from the report on his desk. That's all we know, Quinn. How long has she been in the ground? Quinn asked. Possibly between 8 and 12 years. Then we have to find out more. Look, it's not our problem, Basil said. The skeletons were found in Rabun County. The chief stretched a point to even get a forensic anthropologist to examine these bones. I'm making it our problem. 9 bodies were found in Talladega, Quinn said quietly. I'm asking for facial reconstruction on only 1. Look, Chief Maxwell doesn't want to be drawn into this mess. I need to know who this child is. It's not going to happen. Why don't you give up? I need to know who she is. Jesus, Quinn was relentless. Basil had run into him a few times before, and the detective had always interested him. He'd heard somewhere that Quinn was an ex-SEAL, and he could believe it. No recommendation, Quinn. Change your mind. He shook his head. Have you ever done anything wrong, Basil? Quinn asked softly. Something you wouldn't want anyone to know? Are you threatening me? Just make the recommendation, Basil. Basil's lips tightened. I suppose you want me to recommend the forensic sculptor, too, Eve Duncan. You bet. Everyone in the department knows it's her kid you've been looking for all these years. The chief won't go for that either. Duncan's too high profile after that political cover-up case she worked on. Reporters would be climbing all over the place if she was brought in. And isn't she somewhere in the South Pacific now? She'd come back. Basil knew Eve Duncan would come back. Everyone at the Atlanta PD was familiar with her story. A young girl who had borne an illegitimate child and then fought her way out of the slums against enormous odds. She was nearly finished with college and was on her way to a decent life when she had been struck by the cruelest blow. Her daughter, Bonnie, had been murdered by a serial killer, and her body had never been found. Frazier, her killer, had been executed without revealing the location of any of the bodies of the 12 children he confessed to killing. Since that time, she had dedicated herself to finding other lost children, alive and dead. She had gone back to school, gotten a degree.